All right, there we go.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start with my name then. I am Philip Coronado. On there, you guys will see Andrew, though. Andrew's my middle name. Either one is fine. Hopefully, it doesn't confuse you guys, but everything on Blackboard will say Philip, so that's me.
I'm Keisha, well, Keisha Brianing, but I'm actually Keisha Collette. ASU messed up my maiden name to my married name, but that's okay. I'm here.
I'm Rhonda Kane. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
And that's my real name.
And I'm Caitlin Cohen.
Okay. And I'm Megan Fairbank. I usually just go by Meg, but that didn't really matter. You can call me whatever.
I'm Samantha. You can call me Sam. It's usually what I go by.
Cool. All right. Anyone want to go first?
Well, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Whomever. Go ahead, Rhonda. You're more than welcome.
Our prompt is what makes a good leader and what makes a bad leader. And I guess I'll start. I feel like a good leader is someone who has integrity and someone who influences others in such a way that they teach and they, I'm trying to think of the words I want to say right now. A good leader is someone who exemplifies the things that they want their people to do, and that can see the big picture. A good leader knows how to see the strengths and weaknesses in their people and draw out the strengths and teach through those weaknesses. A bad leader, I've experienced more bad leaders, I think, than good leaders in my working career. A bad leader doesn't have integrity, doesn't exemplify the things that they are trying to hold their people accountable for. A bad leader puts people down, does not encourage. I had a manager when I worked at Starbucks for a while, and I had a manager who would like totally degrade people on the floor while she was if she didn't like something, it doesn't matter if you were talking to a customer or not, she would start yelling at you. She would steal from the pastry case. She was just mean to people, and she like gossiped, and that's a bad leader. I know that is a really extreme example, and it doesn't have to be that extreme to be a bad leader, but it was a really bad leader.
Do you think that like part of the bad leadership, do you think that helped form your type of leadership that you wanted to be?
I'm sorry. Oh, did it form mine?
Yeah. Did it help like make you understand like what kind of leader you wanted to be after seeing that aspect of it?
I already knew that was bad, and quite honestly, it helped draw out leadership in me because, I was a barista, but everybody was afraid of her, and I felt like we all kind of got to the place where we didn't even care if she fired us anymore, and because we didn't want to work for her, so I figured it was time for me to either say something or find a new job. So I had a meeting with her and had an honest discussion about how I felt the way she treated us, and it made significant change because she didn't see it. She didn't realize she came across that way. So I felt like it helped draw out leadership in me and make me kind of step up to the plate a little bit, which I could have just quit and got another job, but I felt obligated.
Nice.
Well, I'll go.
I think being a good leader is like a combination of the leadership styles that they talked about in the second chapter, like the laissez-faire, the democratic, the authoritarian, because there's definitely all types of situations where one would work really well, and sometimes in a different situation that would be a really terrible thing to do. And I think being a good leader is knowing your people and knowing what type of style is appropriate at what time.
Yes.
Because I know personally I've had leaders and managers that were very authoritarian when in the situation a more democratic approach or even like a hands-off approach would have been more successful, and me and my team would have been more efficient and more effective if we would have just had that freedom as opposed to somebody just standing over us and like, do this, do that. So I think it's really about knowing your people and knowing what you want the outcome to be. Because I mean, say in a situation where you're like, it's a safety issue, or you're dealing with like people where you're like, I need you to do this right now because it needs to be done for safety reasons. Like, I think authoritarian style is obviously the best case. But if you're just like, hey, this project is due sometime, like a more hands-off approach and like let them learn, maybe better. And I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. And I think a poor leader just doesn't, it almost goes to the point where they don't want to know themselves and they don't want to know their people. So they would rather be in control and do it their way, even if that means hurting their people or their production or anything like that, instead of actually taking the time to understand.
I think in that instance that you just talked about with the poor leader, I think sometimes that's because the leader is only looking out for themselves and how it benefits them, and they're not ethical in that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, and to piggyback on both of your comments, I mean, the example is also what they set. You know, it has to be practiced as well as set. You can't do as I say and not as I do mentality, which, you know, exhibits the poor side of the leadership. And I mean, I fortunately had both. I mean, I currently work for an amazing leader, and she, you know, the way that she leads is she doesn't expect us to do any job that she wouldn't do.
That's awesome.
You know, and she's very supportive. And I mean, I've been fortunate, but I've also had very, very poor leadership where it was, you know, do as I say, not as I do, or it's your job, or, you know, we can find somebody else to replace you, and then eventually you feel like another number. So, or the entitlement or lack of empathy is definitely a part of the poor leadership part. So
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. I like what you said at the end right there about lack of empathy. The part that I really enjoyed most, I guess, or about learning about this leadership styles and everything was the emotional intelligence of the leader.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, it's really, really good because personally, you know, when I think of different leaders that have been in my life, the ones who kind of connect on can connect on an emotional level and kind of have empathy for the people who are following them. Those are the ones who personally I want to follow. You know, like I want to follow the leader who's going to invest like in me, like invest in the individuals. And I don't know if you guys looked at the lecture videos, but one of the stories that she said, I forgot what company, I watched it late last night, but it was one of the companies where they said it's a huge company and like they really chose to invest in the individuals, and the individuals would make the company great as long as they invested in them on the individual level. And so, yeah, I think emotional intelligence runs really big for me. And on the flip side of that, like a trigger for me personally, as a red flag for like a poor leadership is like narcissism, like someone who is like completely about themselves, that can't empathize, that can't really, connect with you as a follower or whatever. So those two things, as far as like good leadership and poor leadership, kind of run loudest for me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that emotional intelligence thing too.
Yeah. I think the lecture was about was it Southwest Airlines?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because I did a lot of stuff on that and their leadership, and it's a lot about like how the communication is and just relating to people. So you create a family. You kind of want someone to make their identity a part of work, and it's hard to do that if you don't connect with like your leader at all. And that's kind of hit or miss with all the stuff I go through. Like if I'm really invested in my leader, I go out of my way for them, and I just feel like I become a better employee.
Yeah.
Really great leaders is that they can make that connection to like what Rhonda was saying, like being an ethical leader and making sure they put themselves not first, but the company and their employees first. And I feel like that really reflects well and makes the company like from a good company to like a really great company. And it just accelerates the leadership on a different level.
I agree.
Like that whole positive environment that leaders bring to the table. I think that's super important because I've worked in companies that, the leaders are negative at all the time. So it makes you not want to go to work. And then you pull your weight to try to be that leader that gives that positivity. And I believe that a positive environment and the mental, the emotional stability and everything is what a good leader really carries.
Absolutely. That manager at Starbucks, she finally got fired, and we got a new manager who was awesome, and the whole culture, the whole environment changed. Like people started wanting to work for her, just like what you were saying.
Awesome. All right. Was that everybody? Did everybody get to share? Anyone have anything else to say, I guess?
What would you identify, like, I guess we can go one at a time, but what would you identify, like, your leadership out of those three that we have? Like, what's your main leadership style, I guess?
What did we test?
Yeah. I got Democratic.
I'm Democratic.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah, same.
I see that, but then I also kind of know, like, I need to learn about all the other ones too and where they could be useful a bit more. Because I think I'm more democratic because I'm used to doing these group situations where I am having to work with people, especially online, and we're all in different places.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know if that's kind of what skewed my point of view a lot, but.
So do you do this type of stuff for work? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I do this for work, presentations, and then pretty much all of my stuff for ASU, I've just been doing Google Hangouts for everything.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So
this is only the second class I've had to do this kind of thing for.
This is like my fifth, and this is probably like I know a lot about Southwest Airlines because of these classes. Because I'm very great at leadership. They're in all of my books.
Yeah.
And
Kelleher was an amazing leader, obviously.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard, like comparing them. But yeah, like pretty much every part of leadership, they're going to have like the same three companies. So it's kind of funny because it's like I'm just kind of layering on top of it, I guess, just learning more. But I'm nice to have a group that's like going to meet at the same time because I'm used to having to stay up till 3 a.m.
Yeah, on the same page too. Every bad leadership example is Enron too. Southwest Airlines and Costco for good, and Enron for bad.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what did everyone else score? If you guys read chapter 2 yet?
I'm Democratic all the way, but I know that I need to change it in certain situations. So, but I'm definitely a Democratic leader.
Well, it's kind of like my husband works for Wellstar, which is a large health network out here, and it's amazing that you can put somebody in a position that's supposed to be a leader, and they have zero leadership skills at all. They don't lead by example. They roll into a meeting to have another meeting to have another meeting, and nothing ever gets solved. And it's just a matter of, like, even in our textbook, I'm like, oh my God, this is you. This is you. This is you. This is your everyday. Not one person comes into a meeting prepared. Not they are textbook example of what not to do in those situations, and it's just interesting because USAA was a great company. It was like Southwest. They believed in making sure the employees were taken care of before we could take care of the customers. So, but there aren't that many out there, unfortunately.
So there aren't. Most companies are more concerned with their bottom line than they are the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I know personally I've noticed a difference because I worked in several different companies. That the one company that I worked for that really invested in us and like really wanted to know, like, hey, let me work with you. What's your home life like? Do you have kids? Do we need to work around like other schedules?
Wow.
Things like that, where I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I will do whatever you want me to because you like understand my situation and you are willing to work with me, instead of my other company was like, oh, you show up at this time. I don't care that, you know, somebody died, or that I don't care that you have a sick kid at home. I don't care about any of that. You just show up and you do your job and you go home. And I was miserable there. And I was like, I don't want to work for you. Like, why would I want to show up and invest in a company and invest in a leader like that when at the end of the day, I know you don't care about me at all.
Right. No, that's true. It's totally true. You invest in your employees, then they make a better experience for the customer because they are enjoying their job, and then the customer is more loyal to the company, and the bottom line goes up automatically. Like, it's kind of a cyclical thing, and you focus only on the bottom line, and your employees don't want to work for you so well because they feel like they're only a number.
How are we on time, Philip?
We're about 17 minutes in.
We're about 17 minutes in.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Hey, you can tell she's done this before.
Well, does anyone
awesome.
have any like last things to add, or?
I don't.
Like we touched our basis, and we all can agree that, you know, that emotional intelligence and understanding your followers is important as a leader.
Yeah.
Sweet.
That's good.
So, I'm sorry.
All right. Oh, sorry. I forgot to hit record.
No, you didn't.